Welcome back, dear viewers. Still covering live the Senate elections 2025 on Nile TV International. And directly, let's have a look on the National Elections Authority, where we talk to Ahmed Nader, Nile TV's correspondent. Ahmed Nader, if you can hear me well, I would like to know more about the Senate elections 2025 and the alignment, of course, between the National Elections Authority with all the heads of committees to ensure that the workflow is running smoothly without any obstacles.
Yes, Reem, exactly as you mentioned, the efforts of the National Elections Authority and its executive committee headed by Councillor Ahmed Binderi, and we were together on air, I think, during the expatriates voting for the Egyptians living outside of Egypt, and we mentioned the efforts of the National Elections Authority to be coordinating with the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, for example, with the ambassadors, with the consuls all over the world for Egypt, representing the country outside of Egypt in 117 countries. But during the 4th and the 5th of August, for the Egyptians living within Egypt, and for the Senate elections for the upcoming round for the next 5 years until 2030, we have seen even more efforts, because we are dealing with millions of registered eligible voters here in the country, in 8,825 polling stations, 27 governorates. So the press conference for Councillor Binderi that took place at 4 p.m. Cairo local time from the 8th floor at the headquarters of the National Elections Authority, it focused on a number of topics, of course, aside from his meetings, his online meetings with councillors from all over the country in different polling stations in 27 governorates. But one important topic was about the complaints received by the National Elections Authority. And the National Elections Authority, of course, they received those complaints through the Central Operations Room from councillors, from the civil servants, from the staff at different polling stations all over the country. They receive the complaints, they work upon them, they solve the complaints. A number of complaints that they have received yesterday on the first day of voting for the Egyptians living within Egypt was about the identification cards, for example, the expiry of some of the IDs for the Egyptians going to the polling stations with expired identification cards or IDs, and this meant that they were not able to be casting their ballots. This was one main problem, one main complaint. Some logistical problems reported by the councillors, reported by the staff of the National Elections Authority and the legislative bodies overseeing and focusing on or observing and monitoring the electoral process for the Senate elections. As I mentioned, was about the ID. That was the main problem. The logistical problems in terms of missing some papers, some delays in opening and closing the polling stations and the ballot boxes. Those problems were solved, they were reported, and they were worked upon by the National Elections Authority and then solved in due time. One important, I would say, guideline by Councillor Ahmed Binderi for all of the councillors working in different governorates and different polling stations and thousands of polling stations scattered all over the country was not to be announcing results, because this is the second and it could be the final day, and without any prolonged hours, this is the final day for the Senate elections for the Egyptians living within Egypt. So it was one important guideline by Councillor Ahmed Binderi not to be announcing results, to be counting the ballots, to be counting the votes, but not announcing the results at the end of the day. And during the meeting, or during the virtual meeting, the online meetings that took place between Councillor Binderi from the Central Operations Room and the councillors and different staff all over Egypt, it was more about checking up on the judges, the councils, the councillors, the other staff, the civil servants who fell ill. Some of them even had died at the beginning of the day, sending condolences to the families of the deceased, and it was sent by Councillor Hazim Badawi, the head of the National Elections Authority, yesterday and for today. We have seen some unfortunate deaths and passing by some members of the National Elections Authority, but we have seen as well some members of the National Elections Authority, some judges and some civil servants. They fell ill for today, for example in the governorate of Luxor, in Suhag as well. So a number of governorates have witnessed those events, but they have been referred to the hospital. They were taken to the hospital, and some of them even returned once again to work and resuming operations as usual. Reem.
Of course, we are sorry to hear this, Ahmed, that some deaths were reported, or also some sickness from some members of the National Elections Authority, but also we are also glad that they dealt with it smoothly and professionally as well. But also not to miss, Ahmed, asking you about the end of this process, the expectations from the National Elections Authority regarding the votes being counted and concluded. How is this process going to be running smoothly without any problems and also without any breaking of the electoral silence as well?
Yes, Reem, that was one important guideline, as you mentioned, by Councillor Ahmed Binderi, the head of the Executive Committee of the National Elections Authority, speaking about the delegates of the candidates who are being placed at different polling stations all over the country. He mentioned that after the closure of the polling station, the conclusion of the voting and the start of the counting of ballots, of the counting of the votes, those delegates, they have no right to be there and to be witnessing even the process. This should be done. The process of counting of the ballots, of counting of the votes should be concluded, should be done by the councillors within the polling station. The opening, the closure, the sealing of the ballot boxes, those are all the responsibilities of the councillors within every polling station. We have 8,825 polling stations all over the country, and this is the responsibility. And that was one important guideline by Councillor Binderi to the delegates, to the people even standing outside of the polling station, to be counting the votes, not announcing the results. This is the main responsibility and this is the main target for the National Elections Authority, which will be done later on this month. And we have seen, speaking of the turnout, during the meetings that took place between Councillor Binderi and the councillors all over the country, a high turnout, for example in the governorates of NEA and in Damietta. They have witnessed a high turnout, which resulted in more employees being assigned to NEA governorate, or the polling stations in NEA governorate, to the polling stations in the governorate of Damietta. They needed more employees, they needed more logistical support, and they needed even more security presence by the police to be organizing the situation back there.
I would like to thank you so much, Ahmed. Nader, Nile TV's correspondent from the National Elections Authority. Thank you for all of these details and for also transferring what's going on and all the updates regarding the Senate elections 2025. Dear viewers, for this we're continuing the special coverage regarding the Senate elections 2025. But before anything, let's have a short break and get back to this special coverage.